If you're watching this video, you're probably exhausted. And I don't mean the kind of exhausted that a long sleep on a Saturday morning can fix. I mean something deeper than that. A tiredness that lives in your bones, in your nervous system, in some quiet place inside you that you can't quite name. And if you're a highly sensitive person, if you spent your life feeling things more deeply, processing the world more intensely, absorbing the emotions and energy of the people around you, then I want you to know something before we go any further. That exhaustion, it makes complete sense, and it is not your fault. I'm Esther Kane, a psychotherapist with 30 years of experience working with highly sensitive people. I'm also 55 years old, and I am an HSP myself. So when I talk about what it feels like to be a sensitive woman navigating this stage of life, I'm not speaking from the outside looking in. I'm sitting right here beside you. Today, I want us to have a real conversation, the kind where we don't rush, we don't perform, we don't pretend everything is fine. I want this to feel like we're sitting together in my therapy office, soft lamp on, maybe a cup of tea getting cold on the side table, and we're finally going to talk about what's really going on. Because here's what I know after 30 years of working with women just like you. The exhaustion highly sensitive women feel after 50 is not what most people think it is. And once you understand what is actually happening in your body, in your nervous system, everything changes. So let's begin. Make sure to watch the entire video because at the end, I will be walking you through a practice which will help you learn how to regulate your nervous system. Before I take you into the heart of what's happening, I want to sit with something for a moment. I want to name the experience, really name it, because one of the most painful things about being a highly sensitive person is feeling like what you're going through doesn't have words, like it's too complicated or too subtle or too hard to explain to someone who doesn't live inside your nervous system. So let me try to put some words to it. There's the physical exhaustion. Your body feels heavier than it used to. Simple things. A busy afternoon, a loud family dinner, even a day that looked quiet on paper can leave you needing days to recover. And you find yourself wondering, is this just aging? Is something wrong with me? Why can't I keep up the way I used to? There's the emotional exhaustion. Other people's moods don't just affect you, they seem to land in you. You walk into a room and you can feel the tension before a single word has been spoken. You absorb someone else's anxiety and carry it home with you. You care deeply, sometimes so deeply it hurts. And by the end of the day, you feel like you've been feeling for everyone and no one has been feeling for you. And then there's what I call the existential exhaustion, the deep, quiet tiredness of trying for decades to be someone your nervous system was never designed to be, of pushing through when every cell in your body was asking you to stop, of being told you're too sensitive, too emotional, too much, and working so hard to make yourself smaller, quieter, more manageable. Does any of that sound familiar? I want to be clear about something right from the start. This is not about weakness. It isn't about aging. It's about wiring. And I also want to acknowledge something. You've probably already tried things. Sleep hygiene, supplements, therapy, yoga, meditation apps, cutting back on coffee, adding back the coffee. Some of it has helped a little, but the exhaustion is still there. And part of what I want to explore with you today is why. Why the usual advice doesn't fully land for highly sensitive women and what actually works instead. So, we're going to cover 3 things together today. First, I'm going to show you the 3 hidden faces of HSP exhaustion, what it actually looks like from the inside. Then, I'm going to take you into the neuroscience, what's genuinely happening in your nervous system after 50. And finally, I'm going to give you 3 specific practices that work for the way your nervous system is actually built, not generic wellness advice, real somatic nervous system specific practices that I use with my own clients. So let's take a breath before we begin. Take a long, deep breath in, and then let it out with a long, slow breath. Ah, that's better. Ready? Let's go. Part 1. The 3 hidden faces of HSP exhaustion. The first thing I want to give you is a framework, because when we can name what's happening, we stop fearing it. And when we stop fearing it, we can actually work with it. The first phase of HSP exhaustion is what I call the sensory budget drain. Here's what I mean by that. Every single day, your nervous system has a finite capacity for incoming stimulation. I think of it as a sensory budget. Most people start the day with a full tank, let's say $100, and they spend it down gradually over the course of the day. By evening, they're tired. They sleep. Then they wake refilled. But an HSP nervous system doesn't work quite like that. Because you process everything more deeply, sounds, light, social dynamics, other people's emotional states, the subtext under a conversation, the flicker of a fluorescent light, the texture of a shirt that's slightly wrong, every one of those inputs draws from your sensory budget, not just the big dramatic things, all of it, all day long. So while a non-HSP might arrive home at 6 o'clock with $20 left in their tank, many of my HSP clients are running on fumes by noon. And here's what changes after 50. That daily budget for many highly sensitive women gets smaller. Not dramatically, not all at once, but perceptibly. Hormonal shifts, the natural recalibration of the nervous system, decades of accumulated stress, they all play a role. Women who managed beautifully at 35 find themselves genuinely depleted by 48, by 52, by 56. Not because they've weakened, because the math has changed. I remember one of my clients, let's call her Amina. She came to me at 52, convinced she had chronic fatigue syndrome. She'd been to 3 different doctors. All of her tests came back normal. When we started working together, Amina described her life, and on the surface, she looked like the woman everyone could count on. She was the steady one in her family, the one who remembered the birthdays, checked in on her mother, showed up for her grown kids, handled things at work, and still tried to keep a peaceful, beautiful home. What she couldn't explain was why she ended every single day feeling like she'd been carrying everyone else's weight on top of her own. When I introduced her to the concept of the sensory budget, she went very quiet. And then she said, "Esther, you just described every day of the last 10 years of my life." That recognition, the single moment of being seen and understood, was the beginning of everything changing for her. Now, the second phase of HSP exhaustion is what I call invisible labor accumulation. And this one is particularly important for women watching this because it's so often invisible, even to ourselves. Invisible labor for HSPs is not just the physical tasks we carry, the meals, the appointments, the mental load of running a household or managing a team. It includes the constant, exhausting work of emotional processing, the reading of rooms, the tracking of everyone's moods and needs before they've even voiced them, the absorbing of tension that nobody else in the room seems to notice, the managing of your own responses so that you don't burden others with your sensitivity. That is labor. It is real, it is demanding, and it is almost entirely unacknowledged because it's invisible. You can't point to it on a to-do list, but it draws from your nervous system just as surely as any physical task. And after decades of doing it, the body sends a bill. I want to pause here for a moment and just let that land, because I think that many of you are nodding right now, not just understanding this intellectually, but feeling it in your body. Maybe there's a little loosening, little exhale that says, yes, that's it. That's exactly it. You're not imagining it. It is real, and you are not alone in it. The third phase of HSP exhaustion is what I call running on empty, named after Jackson Browne's famous 70s song of the same name. And this one, in my clinical experience, is the one that brings most women over 50 to therapy. Here's how it works. Many highly sensitive women spend decades running on empty, relying on that inner voice that says, push through. You'll feel better once it's done. Just make it to the weekend. You can rest after the holidays. Hold it together a little longer. And for a while, it works. Running on empty becomes a kind of cognitive override, a way to push past what your nervous system is trying to tell you. Many highly sensitive women become very good at this. They are high achievers, caregivers, and the ones who keep things going when everyone else is falling apart. Until one day, the strategy that used to carry you simply stops working. The well you used to draw from feels empty. You try to push through, and there's nothing there. And that moment can feel terrifying, like you've lost yourself, like something fundamental is broken, like the person you've been for your whole adult life quietly left the building. I want to say this directly to you. Nothing was broken. You are not lost. What's happened is that your nervous system has finally, after years of being overridden, refused to be overridden anymore. And in my 30 years of working with HSPs, I've come to see that moment, as frightening as it is, not as a collapse, but as a turning point, an invitation. But to understand why it happens, we need to go inside, into the neuroscience, into what's actually happening after 50. Let's go there now. I promise you, what I'm about to share with you is anything but cold. It is, in fact, one of the most compassionate things I know. Because when you understand why your nervous system works the way it does, you stop fighting it. And when you stop fighting it, something remarkable begins to happen. So let's start at the beginning. What is an HSP nervous system, and what makes it different? The research, largely pioneered by psychologist Dr. Elaine Aron, shows that highly sensitive people have what's called a lower sensory threshold. The technical term is differential susceptibility, which simply means that your nervous system responds more intensely to all incoming stimulation, both positive and negative, than a non-HSP nervous system does. This is not a psychological quirk. This is not something that happened because of your childhood. This is neurological. It's in the wiring. It shows up in brain imaging studies. HSPs process sensory and emotional information more deeply, using more neural resources per experience than non-HSPs. And I often say to my clients, your nervous system is not weaker than a non-HSP nervous system. It is more sensitive, the way a precision instrument is more sensitive than a blunt tool. More data comes in, more data gets processed, and that processing takes energy. Now, here's where it gets particularly important for women over 50. For decades, which is most of your adult life, you had a quiet, invisible ally helping you manage that sensory load. Her name is estrogen. I know that might sound surprising. We tend to think of estrogen as a reproductive hormone related to fertility, to the menstrual cycle, to pregnancy. But estrogen does far more than that. Among its many roles, estrogen directly regulates the nervous system. It modulates the receptors for serotonin, the neurotransmitter most associated with emotional stability and a sense of well-being. And it modulates GABA receptors, the ones responsible for calming the nervous system, for turning down the volume when the stimulation gets to be too much. In practical terms, estrogen has been acting for most of your adult life as a natural buffer between your sensitive nervous system and the full force of the world. It's like a shock absorber, a soft filter. And as you move through perimenopause and menopause, as estrogen levels shift and decline, that buffer begins to thin. FYI, I have done other videos on this topic. Click here to check out the whole playlist. I had a client, let's call her Maria, who came to me at 54 in a state of genuine bewilderment. She had spent years being the one everyone leaned on, helping her aging parents, staying closely connected to her adult children, showing up for her extended family, and trying to hold everything together with warmth and grace. She said to me, "Esther, I used to be able to handle things. I wasn't perfect, but I could cope. And now I just can't. Everything lands harder. Everything hurts more. I feel like I'm going backwards." She cried in my office that day, and she said, "What's wrong with me?" I looked at her and I said, "Maria, nothing is wrong with you, but I want to tell you something. The buffer you didn't even know you had, it's thinning, and your highly sensitive nervous system is now experiencing the world for possibly the first time without its full protective layer." When Maria cried in my office that day, it wasn't about weakness. It wasn't that she'd stopped loving her family or stopped caring or become less capable. It was a biological shift nobody had explained to her, layered on top of years of carrying emotional responsibility for everyone around her. And understanding that single insight was life-changing for her. It wasn't her fault. It was her biology. And biology can be worked with. Now, the third piece of the neuroscience, and this is the one that explains why just rest more often doesn't work, is what is commonly referred to as the tired but wired phenomenon. Here's what happens. When a nervous system is chronically overstimulated, when it has been running above its threshold day after day, year after year, the body's stress response system begins to change. Cortisol, which is your primary stress hormone, starts to dysregulate. It can get stuck. Too high when you need to sleep, too low when you need to function. The rhythm breaks down. And here's the paradox that so many of my clients describe. They are exhausted, genuinely, deeply exhausted, and yet they can't rest. They lie down and their mind keeps going. They sleep 8 hours and wake up tired. They take a quiet weekend and come back to Monday feeling just as depleted as they left Friday. This is not a character flaw. This is a dysregulated cortisol rhythm in a nervous system that has been chronically overactivated, and passive rest alone is not enough to reset it. I often say to my clients, rest is not optional for HSPs, it's maintenance. But I want to add something to that today. For HSPs over 50, the right kind of rest matters enormously. Passive rest, lying down, watching something calming, sleeping, refills the tank, but it doesn't reset the engine, and your nervous system after 50 needs both. So, what does actually reset it? Let's take a breath and let's go there together. Take a long, deep breath in, and then let it out with a long, slow breath. I want to pause here for a moment and check in with you. If what I've shared so far is resonating, if you're sitting there thinking, yes, that's me, that's exactly what's been happening, I want you to know that recognition is itself the beginning of the reset. Something in your nervous system just relaxed a little because it finally feels understood, and that matters. I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me which of the 3 types of exhaustion resonates most with you. The sensory exhaustion, the emotional exhaustion, or that existential tiredness of trying to be someone you were never designed to be. I read every single comment, everyone. And if this is speaking to someone you love, a friend, a sister, a daughter, a colleague, please share this video with her, because one of the most powerful things we can do for a highly sensitive woman is hand her a mirror that finally shows her the truth. Okay, the practices that actually work. Part 3, coming home to your nervous system. I want to frame this section carefully because I've seen what happens when HSPs receive wellness advice that wasn't designed for them. It creates more shame, more striving, more forcing. So I want to be clear. What I'm about to share with you is not a productivity protocol. I'm not going to tell you how to optimize yourself or perform better or get more done. What I'm going to share with you is a path back to yourself. 3 practices grounded in nervous system science that are specifically designed for the way an HSP is wired. The first practice is what I call the sensory Sabbath. A sensory Sabbath is a deliberately scheduled period of low stimulation, not just a quiet cup of tea, although I do love a quiet cup of tea. This is intentional, it is protected, and it is non-negotiable. Here's the neurological rationale. Your nervous system is designed to function in contrast, periods of stimulation followed by periods of genuine withdrawal. In a world of constant notifications, open plan offices, social media feeds, and ambient noise, most HSPs never fully experience the low end of that contrast. Their nervous system never gets the chance to reset its baseline threshold. And without that reset, the threshold creeps lower and lower so that things that were manageable before become genuinely overwhelming. The sensory Sabbath is how you give your nervous system the contrast it needs. Practically, it looks like this: 20 to 30 minutes each day. Phone off, screens off, lights dimmed, no content consumption, no podcast, no music playing softly in the background, just you, your body, your breath, the natural sounds around you. I know that can feel deeply uncomfortable at first. I had a client, let's call her May, who told me she hadn't sat in genuine silence in over a decade. Between work, caring for her family, checking in on her parents, and trying to be the calm, capable one everyone could rely on, she had learned to fill every quiet moment with podcasts, scrolling, or background noise because, she said, the silence felt too loud. When we introduced the sensory Sabbath, she resisted for 2 full weeks. She would sit down, and within 3 minutes, her hand would reach for her phone. But we kept working on it. And about 3 weeks in, May sent me a message. She said, "Esther, I don't know how to explain this, but I feel like I got a piece of myself back that I didn't even know I lost." That's the sensory Sabbath. It is simple, it is free, and it is one of the most profound gifts you can give your nervous system. The second practice is somatic boundary setting. And I want to approach this carefully because the word boundaries can sometimes sound like one more thing you have to enforce, manage, or get exactly right. So I want to offer you a different frame. For highly sensitive people, boundaries are not primarily psychological. They're not just about saying no or having a difficult conversation or asserting yourself. Before any of that, they are somatic. They are physical. They live in the body. Here's what I mean. When you, as an HSP, walk into a room, your nervous system is already reading, scanning for emotional temperature, for tension, for need. It's doing this automatically, below the level of conscious thought. And if you don't have a somatic anchor, a physical sense of where you end and the room begins, all of that emotional data flows straight in, through you, into you. The practice I teach my clients is what I call the body check-in. It takes about 60 seconds, and it looks like this. Before you enter a potentially stimulating situation, a family gathering, a work meeting, a difficult conversation, you pause. You take one slow breath, and you place a hand on your heart or on your belly or somewhere on your body that feels grounding. And you ask quietly, what is mine right now? Notice what you're carrying before you walk in. Name it. And then, when you come out the other side, you do it again. You pause. You breathe. And you ask, what did I pick up in there? What belongs to them and what belongs to me? This is not a complicated practice, but over time, it trains your nervous system to maintain a clearer boundary between self and other. My clients who practice this regularly describe it as, and I love this phrase, coming back to themselves. They stop losing themselves in rooms full of other people's needs. They start arriving places as themselves and leaving places still as themselves. Before, many of them describe living in a state of constant absorption, other people's feelings flowing through them like water through a net. After somatic boundary work, something shifts. The net becomes more solid. They can feel the difference between what belongs to them and what belongs to someone else. And that is a nervous system learning, finally, to regulate. The third practice is what I call the decompression window, and this is the one I most want you to take away from today. Here's the principle. Your HSP nervous system, after any high stimulation event, a busy day at work, a social gathering, a difficult conversation, even a deeply moving film, needs dedicated processing time before it can take in anything new. Non-HSPs generally don't need this. They can move from one stimulus to the next with relatively little transition. But an HSP who moves directly from one high stimulation event to the next without a processing window begins to accumulate activation, like compound interest building silently in the background. The decompression window is a structured 30 to 45-minute period after any significant stimulation during which you do not take in any new content. No phone, no news, no conversations if you can avoid them. You might walk slowly. You might sit. You might journal. You might simply lie down and let your nervous system do its work. The key is this. Nothing new comes in while the last experience is still being processed. I want you to think of this not as withdrawing from life. Think of it as the decompression chamber on a deep sea vessel, the pressurized room that lets a diver come safely back to the surface after a deep dive. Without it, the ascent causes damage. With it, the diver surfaces whole. HSPs who learn to use their decompression window consistently don't become less engaged with life. They become more present because they've genuinely processed the last experience before they take on the next one. They stop carrying the residue of every interaction into every new moment. One of my clients told me about 6 months into practicing this, Esther, I feel like I'm actually here now, like I'm actually inside my own life, instead of always running just slightly behind it. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly it. That is coming home to your nervous system. Let's go to the close. I want to close today by saying something that I mean very deeply. You are not falling apart. You are not too sensitive. You are not failing at life or at aging or at any of the things you've been working so hard to get right. You are a highly sensitive person, a woman with a nervous system wired for depth, for beauty, for profound connection. And that nervous system has been working at full capacity for decades in a world that was never designed with you in mind. And after 50, your biology is asking something of you. Clearly, finally, sometimes loudly. It's asking for a different relationship with that nervous system, not a relationship built on pushing through and overriding and managing, a relationship built on listening, on trust, on what I like to call coming home. You're not alone in this. You are not too much. You are wired differently, and there is profound wisdom in that wiring. The exhaustion you feel is not your enemy. It's not a sign that you failed or that life has passed you by. It is a signal. It is your nervous system finally loud enough to be heard, saying, "This is the moment. This is when we build a life that actually fits who you are." And I want you to know that life is available to you. Not after you fix yourself, not after you push through one more thing, right now, exactly as you are. And now, as promised, here is your bonus guided meditation. I call this the guided somatic reset. I want to give you something to take away. A 90-second nervous system reset, right here, right now. You don't need anything, just wherever you're sitting, whatever position you're in. Let's do this together. Start by taking one slow breath in through your nose and a long, slow exhale out through your mouth, longer than feels natural. Let the exhale go all the way until your lungs are empty. Now, place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. Feel the warmth of your own hands. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your breath. Now, very slowly, begin a soft scan from the top of your head, noticing any tension held there, and let your awareness move slowly downward. Your forehead, the space between your eyes, your jaw, let it soften. Your shoulders, let them drop just a fraction. Your chest, your belly, rising and falling beneath your hand. Now, take one more slow breath in. And as you exhale, let something go. You don't have to decide what. Your nervous system knows. Just let something release. You are here. You are safe. You are enough, exactly as you are right now. Quick note before we finish. Many of you have told me how much you enjoy my guided meditations, so I've recorded a new collection of audio meditations created specifically for highly sensitive people. They'll be available soon for purchase through my YouTube store, so watch out for that. I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment below. Tell me what landed for you today, what you're going to try first, or just tell me that you're here and that you heard this. I read every single comment, and it means more than you know. If this video spoke to you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. A friend, a sister, a daughter. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is hand someone a mirror. Until next time, take good care of your sensitive soul.